Welcome to this video about setting up an institutional stakeholder network for a policy co-creation process. Policy co-creation is a long process that involves several different stakeholders that can include research institutions, community organizations, local governments, and service providers. Setting up a network of the most relevant stakeholders is an important first step to start a successful co-creation project. This task can be quite difficult and definitely time-consuming, depending on who are the initiators of the co-creation, who are the potential stakeholders that need to get on board, and also the overall context. For example, setting up a stakeholder network has been relatively easy in Tallinn because the Association of Estonian Open Youth Centers, one of the main implementers of the project, has previously cooperated with both local and national government and is also the main point of access to young people. When choosing institutional stakeholders for a policy co-creation project, it's important to involve actors that have a high degree of motivation and openness. They need to be ready to try out something different from their regular way of working, and they should be receptive to the idea that young people can be experts of their needs and can contribute to policy development in a meaningful way. For example, the initiators of the policy co-creation process in Svanto Georgie didn't have a pre-existing stakeholder network. Instead, they mapped all of the potential stakeholders, carried out 13 interviews to assess their interest and motivation, and then selected the most motivated and suitable ones. Another thing to keep in mind is choosing institutional stakeholders that are related to the domain and topic of the co-creation project and have at least some decision-making power or power to lobby the national government. Last but not least, the internal dynamics of a stakeholder group should be taken into account throughout the whole process of policy co-creation. It should be discussed and decided upon collectively and early on in the process who from each organization will actually take part in the day-to-day activities of the co-creation process. Once the stakeholder network is set up, it's important to keep in mind that different stakeholders will have different expectations and understandings regarding co-creation. For this reason, it is crucial to be very clear about the commitment required for such a process, about the principles of co-creation and how they translate into group dynamics, as well as the main focus of the co-creation project itself. The most effective way to manage the expectations of stakeholders is by having honest discussions regarding project objectives, roles, resources, and capacity before any actual work begins. In Uplift, we used action plans in all 4 locations for this exact reason. An action plan is a living document that clearly outlines the objectives, the strategy, and actions that need to be taken, the responsibilities of each partner, and also a timeline and a plan to manage the whole process. In this way, everybody knows what they should do. But don't worry, in case things change, the action plan can also change, adapting the timeline and the strategies to the new circumstances. Another thing to keep in mind is the budget. Any co-creation process has a cost in terms of money and people's time, so it's crucial to seriously discuss where the resources come from and how that could influence the process. For example, if the main sponsor also takes part in participatory processes, there is always a risk that they might, even unwillingly, influence the process in a way that serves their interests and sideline young people as co-creators. Another important thing to decide early on is how the co-creation process is going to be coordinated. Which process coordination model you choose depends on the specific project, including the number and type of institutional stakeholders involved, as well as their degree of previous experience with participative processes. For instance, in Uplift, all locations have set up their own version of a steering committee, which acted as a safeguard for the integrity of the co-creation process and made decisions about how to adapt the process as it went on. A crucial question to ask yourselves in this regard is, to what extent are young people involved in the coordination and management of the co-creation process? Finally, it might be helpful to keep in mind that institutional stakeholders likely need some time to get familiar with co-creation as an approach. A safe space where doubts and difficulties can be expressed will help them adjust to new working methods and move past any initial skepticism.